We're still pleased with the growth that we've seen versus last year. Last year was a year of very good growth for us. We're continuing to see that happen. The strategy is paying off. What we are doing is trying to expand our addressable market as quickly as we can.
Hello, you're watching Proactive. I'm joined by Eden Research CEO Sean Smith. Sean, very good to see you. You're out with a couple of news releases this week, a trading update, but also news that you've received your second approval for Ecovelex in Italy, and that's something you've been waiting for.
Absolutely, and good morning, by the way. Thanks for having me on. The trading update we can get to in a moment, but focusing a little bit on Ecovelex and the news that we put out this week, it is very good news. It is essentially a repeat of what we saw last year with the temporary approval granted in one very important territory. In this case, it's Italy, for this new product while we await full authorization. So the temporary approval is a reflection of the fact that there are no good alternative products in the market. Farmers can request of the local authorities an emergency use permit. That has been granted again for the second consecutive year, which is good news. It has never been, and we've always cautioned throughout the course of the last year that just because we had one last year does not mean we'll get another one. And we were fortunate this year that the authorities agreed that there was a strong demand for the product, and we're very happy to be working with our partners there to bring that product to market, again, for the second consecutive growing season.
And this follows a space of approvals for lots of your products in a number of territories, both in Europe and also, of course, North America, Sean.
Yeah, no, that's true. And anybody that follows the story or generally speaking, follows agriculture and crop protection specifically will recognize that, and I say it quite a lot, so apologies if you've heard me say it, but regulatory is a double-edged sword for us. It is the bane of our existence in some respects, and yet, and without exaggeration, it is what is driving the sustainable biopesticide industry, which is our industry. So, in crop protection, and this spans all pesticide categories, what is happening is that regulators around the world are changing the rules. They're making it more and more difficult to use the products that we have conventionally used, which are generally based on synthetic conventional chemistry. And they are favoring products such as those that we develop, which are sustainable alternatives that do the same job and allow farmers to produce their products just as efficiently, just as effectively, but without the sort of collateral damage, if you will, that can be associated with conventional pesticides. So, it is that double-edged sword. Regulatory is where we spend a lot of money. It's an area which slows the pace of commercial progress. Regulatory for us even defines our addressable market. If we have authorization for one disease on one crop, that means that is our market. It doesn't mean we can sell that product to treat the same disease on another crop unless we get regulatory approval. So you can see the dynamic there. But again, we love it and we hate it because at the same time, it does create opportunities. I could give you a very long list of opportunities that we are beginning to realize now, including Ecovelex, by the way, and those that are under development that are new opportunities that have only come about because of regulatory action.
Let's move on to the trading update, Sean. So you've guided for 34% growth in revenue for 2024. That's to 4.3 million pounds. Then moving to 5 million pounds in revenue that you expect in 2025. So a slight delay in reaching that 5 million pound point, but again, really, I suppose, due to the timing of the regulatory approvals that are coming through.
This is you're spot on. It is always about timing, and what we quite often will say is the question isn't whether we get there or not. The question is when. And we are always looking at the season and in fact the calendar year as basically a period of 2 or 3 selling windows. And so we had been really looking toward the year-end selling period, the post-season selling period, as we call it, to drive some additional revenue. And as it turns out, authorizations, particularly in the US, didn't happen as early as we would have liked. And what that meant is that ultimately realizing sales growth in the post-season push in the US in 24 won't happen to the extent that it would have had we received that approval instead of in January of this year, but let's say August of last year, September of last year. There's a lot of work that goes into, and I'm trying very hard to make sure that it doesn't sound like this is an excuse. It is the reality of our industry. If you have a product that isn't yet approved in a territory, you can't even market the product. It's illegal. So there's no marketing materials that can be pushed out. You can go and you can talk to growers, you can do education seminars, you can run demonstration trials if you have the right permits, but you can't really promote the product. That only happens once you gain that authorization. And so you can see there's a lot of work, months and months and months of work that goes into building a good campaign for the coming season. And unfortunately, we just didn't have the opportunity to do that in the US due to the timing of that authorization. So there was a negative impact on the current financial year, 24. Also, there was a bit of a negative swing on currency. Which wasn't, really material, but in any case did contribute in a slightly negative way. We're still pleased with the growth that we've seen versus last year. Last year was a year of very good growth for us. We're continuing to see that happen. The strategy is paying off. What we are doing is trying to expand our addressable market as quickly as we can through the introduction of new products, new regulatory authorizations, etc. And we're very much looking forward to the coming years. We're looking at 25 cautiously. What we don't want to do is give the wrong impression to the market. We're trying to illustrate what that upside potential might be roughly and identify where that upside potential exists, but to also set expectations in line with what we believe is realistically achievable in 25 as well.
Sean, I hope you'll keep us posted on any additional progress. Thank you very much for speaking with us today.
Great, thank you.
That's Eden Research CEO Sean Smith.